Welcome to Between Two Pastries, a not-so-typical nutrition podcast. Nicole and Annie are licensed and registered dietitians. Join them as they discuss hot nutrition topics, challenge popular beliefs, and have a blast doing it. Here are your hosts, Nicole and Annie.
Welcome to Between Two Pastries. This is Nicole.
Hey, everyone, it's Annie. But today we have a listener question. It is about breakfast. But we're going to try to hopefully answer this person's question about breakfast, what to eat, how much to eat, all things regarding breakfast. But when I think about breakfast, I think about cereal and milk always. I mean, that to me is just like the staple breakfast since I was a kid. So I feel like it's a no-brainer and we should just all have cereal and milk. But I know that that's not the case, right? Because it depends on who you are and what you're doing and all of the things. So let's break it down a little bit more. And I know for this person in particular, there's different health concerns that people have to be mindful of. There's different habits, different behaviors. Like, Nicole, we talk about how, we want to work with people and not against people. So if someone habitually doesn't eat breakfast, is that good or bad? Is that right or wrong? Is that, how do we approach that as practitioners? And I know with this particular listener, we are making those modifications for breakfast because breakfast is by far, I still believe it, the most important meal of the day.
Yeah. It definitely is because it sets the tone for the entire day. And if you start putting in then high activity levels, you really have to make sure that fueling piece is there. And I think that that's kind of the thing that you were getting to as well. Like even when it comes down to breakfast, needs are going to be different across the board, depending on what you're doing, who you are, all the things. Your needs are completely going to be different, especially when it comes down to like the amount of intake and what have you. But we also know that some very strong studies have shown that having a very powerful, if you will, breakfast in the morning is really ideal. And one of the reasons why is because of how receptive our cells are at that time, especially after not eating for, however many hours we haven't eaten. But our body is so receptive to take in energy and to more efficiently put it where it needs to go. And so it's like such an ideal time to just really fuel and maximize that.
Well, and Nicole, the argument though, because there is a subgroup of the population that claims, well, breakfast is not the most important part of the day. You should be fasting, or you should be doing this, or you don't have to eat a lot, or you should, there's lots of opinions out there about this concept of breakfast being the most important meal of the day. Now, when I say that breakfast is the most important part of the day, meal of the day, and a client and this particular listener says, well, I forget to eat, I'm not hungry. Mm-hmm. Can you explain to people why that happens?
Well, I think that there's a couple different reasons that it could be happening. So a lot of times we have to look at, when is the last time that they ate? Mm-hmm. Sometimes people will have their dinner at 10 o'clock and they're going to bed at 10:30 and they're not really maybe going to be hungry in the morning. I mean, that's one way that could be. Mm-hmm. Other reasons, I mean, there honestly could be some different hormonal reasons too, if this is what you're asking for, right? So we have different types of functioning can sometimes not give us an appetite in the morning. There's a lot of different things that we're ultimately kind of looking at here.
Yeah. And also too, I mean, I always think of it as like gas in the tank, right? Like fueling the engine to get the metabolism going. Mm-hmm. And if you habitually don't eat breakfast,
right, you trained your body to do that.
You've trained your body to do that. Your metabolism functions at this level, subpar level. And so you don't get those hunger cues right away because that's what your body is used to ultimately. So, I mean, it's about retraining your body. And so, yeah, you might not feel hungry. So now you talk with me or you or another dietitian who says, yeah, breakfast, we got to eat breakfast. So you start eating breakfast, whatever that may look like, whether it be a little or a lot or this or that, and you're going to feel more full because there's a physiological response to this, right? So we have to get our body used to these changes that we make. And oftentimes feelings of fullness are not really truth.
Right.
You know what I mean? I mean,
yes, that's
we
where it
talk
can get
about
a
listening to
little
hunger, fullness, but it can be very gray with what that really means. And I don't want to confuse people, and people be like, well, wait, you just said that I should listen to my hunger and fullness. And yeah, you should. But when you've been doing things that habitually are out of balance, then oftentimes those hunger fullness cues are not really with it.
Well, and the thing we have to remember, as we've talked about before, is all your body ever wants to do is survive, and so it always just adapts to whatever it is that you're doing to it. And because it loves operating on a schedule, it will adapt to whatever schedule, whether it's a haphazard schedule or a regular schedule, whatever that is, it will adapt to. And so my point with that too, Annie, to that example of the individual not hungry because they're not used to eating in the morning, when they've trained themselves to do that too, your body will produce certain enzymes too to get ready to digest food. And so if you've trained it that you don't eat at this particular time, those enzymes aren't being produced, period.
Right.
And that's another reason why if you start eating, you might feel more full.
Right.
Because
Absolutely.
your body is like, oh, we're doing this now. And now it's got to kind of, get with it, if you will. Right. And that's a slight adjustment. It takes a little bit of time. So it's also important that when we talk about any of this stuff ever, it's really based on that individual. And that's why nutrition is so individualized because, these answers are fully based on, what have you been doing on a regular basis? How late do you end up eating your dinner? When is your workout? How late are you sleeping in? How early are you getting up? Like all of these things, come into play when we look at how you feel about your breakfast.
Right. And I mean, with that, I outside of people needing to understand that it is very individualized, I think it's important though for people to understand the physiology of hunger and fullness, breakfast, why these things are important, why metabolism is important, or why these are things we have to consider. Because again, and I know we've mentioned this how many times, we aren't robots.
No, we are not robots.
What I eat for breakfast is going to look very different than someone else, even if our activity is exactly the same.
Sure, absolutely.
And someone who does a lot of activity, they're going to have a very different breakfast than based on the timing of their workout or, whatever it might be. So, those are components as well. And I think we also too, and it's for the sake of convenience, I think we get stuck in a rut with what we consume for breakfast. So like oftentimes breakfast is always the same for so many people. And in some cases, depending on what you're eating, that could be okay because you're still getting carb, protein, and fat and, and enough calories. But for some people, if all they're doing is, a short glass of orange juice, or all they're doing is a hard-boiled egg, or all they're doing is a oatmeal packet, now we run into problems with balance and just simply depriving your body of nutrition at an opportune time to get things going. And like you said, set the stage for the rest of the day.
So I'll even have a lot of clients who don't typically do breakfast will specifically say to me, but Nicole, if I start eating breakfast, I'm going to be hungry all the time. And I think what's also really important, especially when they're actually eating enough breakfast, right? To me, that simply states that's exactly where you want to be because metabolically you are jacked up, right? You are ready to go. You are expending energy. You are, efficiently using energy. We want to be hungrier or hungry, right, during the day. We don't want to have the kind of hunger that we would want to have in the morning at night.
Right. No,
And
absolutely.
that is, yes, and that's the whole thing about that. That's why breakfast sets the tone for the day. So if we're shortcutting at breakfast, your body knows it didn't get enough at a particular time. It's going to make sure to let you know later in the day. And that's why
Right.
when we're so much hungrier later in the day, again, if you have a workout in there, that there's something to that as well. But if we're so much hungrier later in the day, it always goes back to what did we eat earlier in the day?
I'm in a tangent from breakfast just real quick because you hit something that I want listeners to be aware of as it relates to their behavior and their thinking. It blows my mind, and I assume you get this as well. There's a fear around feeling hungry.
Yes.
As if feeling
yes.
hungry
is a
means
thing.
It's a bad thing. They did something wrong. I'm hungry.
Yeah.
So I need to restrict, because for some reason, responding to that hunger and eating means I'm failing. Again, and we've talked about this concept of failing, but there's a link there.
Either that, or it can also mean it's an irritation. Taking care of myself is irritating.
Right.
That is another thing too.
What is that?
I know. I agree.
I mean, yeah, sometimes it sucks to get hungry in the middle of a meeting or whatever, and you got to wait an hour for the meeting to end or whatever. I know that happens, but think of it as an opportunity to say, oh crap, I'm hungry during my meeting at 10:30. I needed to eat a bigger breakfast.
Right. Feedback. It's body feedback.
Body feedback. So we make that modification the next day. So instead of eating X, I'm going to eat X, Y, and Z. Now I make it through that next meeting. I can go to lunch, and now we're all happy. And I'm hungry at when I need to be hungry or whatever, so I think that that's important too, for people to recognize this. For some reason, there is a complete disdain around being hungry.
I would agree. And I will often say to people, it's interesting because it's like when a child is hungry or a baby is screaming because they're hungry, are you going to say, yeah, you know what? We're not going to eat for like another 6 hours because I just don't feel like feeding you.
Or you just ate.
Yeah, right. Like we would never do that. So why are we doing that to ourselves? Like that, these are questions that I think people need to be really thinking about. Like, how am I valuing myself?
But not just on the surface. Like people need to go deeper with these questions. Absolutely. And there's, if people would pull out their journal and answer that question as to, why is it okay for me to feed my baby when they're hungry, but it's not okay for me to feed myself when I'm hungry?
That's right.
What is going on there, and why, why that level of hate, self-hate, shame, something that exists for you. Right. So just to, short tangent, right?
Right. But also the fear of being hungry. I don't want to get hungry. Why don't you want to get hungry? It's like, again, a fear of eating, or then that could lead to a fear of quote unquote eating too much.
Weight gain.
Yeah.
Right. The perception of
this mentality
of what could
that.
happen.
Right. Or maybe it just comes down to not trusting when a body says something and just kind of living in your head and wanting to control all this stuff.
And that piece of control, though, to tangent back to breakfast,
right?
To answer the question, what is a perfect breakfast? That comes from your body. I mean, at the end of the day,
right.
Your body is going to tell you what that is if we're capable of listening to the feedback, as you referred to it, that it's giving us. So, I mean, we can definitely and safely say, a single glass of milk or a piece of fruit or a hard-boiled egg is not breakfast as individual items. If you want to have a glass of milk with fruit, with an egg, with 2 pieces of toast, great. You know what I mean? Like basically the way I always think of it is we need to cover our bases. It's the best time to have some dairy. You're going to have a couple different carbohydrates. So like 2 pieces of toast, a piece of fruit, something on your toast, peanut butter, avocado, eggs, like
Right.
we have to eat a full breakfast. Maybe it's pancakes.
Sure.
Maybe it is cereal and milk with a banana.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's a yogurt parfait.
Right.
It kind of all depends, and it depends on, like you said, the individual, but also what they're doing.
Right. What they're doing. Right. And also, I have clients who just eat very non-traditional things for breakfast because they don't want breakfast food. So,
Yeah.
they'll have, a bean, chicken, and rice salad, I mean, and that's okay too. It's just, it really is a matter of listening to what you
Mhm.
personally need and achieving, ultimately what Annie was even describing there is that balance, right?
Right.
Having the carbohydrate, having the protein, having the fat, because they all work synergistically together
Mhm.
to create what we call satiety, which
Right.
means we want to be, again, not necessarily stuffed, but we want to be comfortable and we want that to last
Right.
until the next meal or the snack.
I think it's tough though when if there is any distrust in your body at all,
Yeah, for sure.
for whatever reason, that obviously makes it very challenging to know what to do. And I do think that the component of activity at
Mm-hmm.
the level in which people that we see are doing it,
Yeah,
this isn't just, oh, I go to the gym 3 days a week.
sure.
People are to the point now where, everyone's a marathoner, everyone's an ultra runner,
Yeah,
everyone's a
completely.
triathlete, everyone's doing things to the extreme, putting their body in a position from body does general activity to now I'm going to do a 100-mile race.
Oh, I know.
And there's a lot physiologically going on that your body's just like, wow, okay,
Yeah,
that's a lot of change for your body at the cellular level. And obviously we know the body is resilient and it's going to adapt to the best of its ability. But the best thing that you can do as an athlete is make sure that you're eating enough around that workout, which for many people occurs early in the
in the
morning,
morning. Yeah.
close to breakfast or
Mm-hmm.
near breakfast time, where you might eat before, during, after, then breakfast. So it's like you've had 3
Absolutely.
breakfasts.
Yep,
Just simple
that's
that
the idea.
acceptance,
Mm-hmm.
but again, the claim is, well, I can't eat before I work out because my stomach hurts.
It's also a
I
trained
can't
response.
eat anything
Mm-hmm.
because I have to get up too early.
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
Yes.
Right. That's
Yeah.
where I'm going with that.
Yeah, definitely trained response.
But
That's
there's a
the thing.
lot of resistance,
Yeah, there really is.
so much resistance around breakfast.
Right.
And it truly is the most important meal. And I know we've talked about this before. I know for me personally, I have nailed my pre, post, and breakfast eating when I'm not still looking for things at dinner or in the evening time.
Absolutely. It's a
That
good
whole
gauge.
concept of
Mm-hmm.
like looking, what do I want? What's like, I'm going to go eat this. Well, that didn't do it. So now what? When
Right.
we have that kind of feeling of I need something, but I don't know what it is, or consistent hunger, binging
Right.
to the
Right.
extreme situations, that is the key number one sign that we're not eating enough in the morning time
Right.
or
Right.
around our workout that
Correct.
generally falls in the morning time.
Correct. Correct.
And I
And
pat myself real big on the back at those days where I'm like, oh yeah, I'm good.
I did it.
It feels
I
good.
did it. Well, and to add to that point too, again, people get
Yeah.
really caught up with like the amount to even have in the morning and what we were just talking about. We both have clients, right, that they may have 3 breakfasts in the morning. I have a client in particular where she has just been so amazed at how much she's had to continue to add to her breakfast just to feel normal, or to not be hungry
Mhm.
before lunch because of the type of activity she's doing in the morning. And so, some people are consuming, upwards to 1,500 calories already, before 10 a.m.
Mhm.
However, they're supporting their body. They're doing precisely what they need to be doing, and they feel
Mhm.
great the rest of the day. They're not
Right.
dragging. They're not overly hungry where they want to gash someone's eyes out, at random times because they just haven't gotten enough fuel. They're not cranky. They're not sleepy. And all of the other meals then feel what someone would probably consider like normal, like, oh yeah, I'm definitely hungry and ready to eat,
Right.
but I'm not dying.
Right. And it takes time to do that, though. I mean,
Yeah.
you have to give, just because you have one great breakfast doesn't mean things are going to turn around
Right.
in 24 hours. You know, it takes
Right.
time, and you have to be consistent with these things too.
Yep.
You know, what about the afternoon exerciser? I mean, how does breakfast play a role for that person?
Yeah. Well, I mean, breakfast will fuel that afternoon exercise too. The thing is we can't start our day being completely, depleted. Again, we get depleted overnight anyway. We can't start our day depleted and then maybe have, oh, well, it's getting close to my workout, so I should just have a light lunch and then,
A
oh,
salad.
right, or whatever. And then they're
Mhm.
working out, between, 2 and 5 and thinking that they're going to have a great workout. The thing is
Right.
we have to look at what's the whole point of our workout? Are we just
Mhm.
doing it just to check it off? Or are we doing it because we want to put the effort in to get the good stuff out of it, right? Like, why are we
Right.
even doing it? Just to overuse joints or to actually get something out of it? So it's like, in order to do that, you want to make sure you're setting yourself up for that best experience.
Right.
And also when you do, eat appropriately, no matter when your workout is, though, not only will your workout feel amazing, but you also won't be that hungry even around that recovery. You know what I'm saying? You'll still be ready for your recovery, but it's not going to be like I have to literally eat from the time I stop my workout until I go to bed.
Right.
You know what I'm
Right.
saying?
I do.
Like, it'll still
Yes.
just be normal. Like, oh,
Right.
I worked out, I had my recovery, I'm satiated. Oh, I'm, having another snack. You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? Like, it's not this,
It's balance. It's
constant
not consuming
thing.
us, you know. It's
Right. Yes.
right.
Right.
You're
Just
not
nagging.
always seeking.
Right. Exactly.
Right. What
Exactly.
about if someone is not a meal person? So like breakfast, we consider breakfast, lunch, and dinner 3 meals a day. What if someone is doing small, frequent meals? So they have, they eat 6 times, and maybe, do you think that there's still validity that breakfast is still a larger meal versus something small, 2 hours later, something small, and so forth?
Yeah, I think that that's a tough one though too. I mean, because I certainly have clients who have like IBS who have to kind of eat in
Right.
certain ways,
Right.
but I think what matters is what's the composition of those things, right? They're not just having a graham cracker and a banana, right?
Right. That's true.
I
Yeah.
mean, when we talk about volume and we're talking about something might be small, but it also might be super high quality and nutrient dense at the same time. You want to give yourself super good quality in the morning. You don't want to shortchange yourself, or you don't want to, like, some people have this concept like, oh, I won't worry about breakfast and I'll just make it to lunch. And like it's
Right.
some sort of big feat because they did that. Like they're proud of themselves. And it's like, again, why are we wanting to push our body's needs aside? Because all we're doing then is our body has to adapt to what you're
Yeah, it's
doing.
functioning subpar.
Exactly.
I mean, but I don't know. What is it about that? Some people really don't mind being subpar. And I think again, we're kind of taking a tangent here. Some people really, really do value so much more than the internal physiological functioning of their body. They value so much more how it looks externally, and weight and body shape and stuff like that. And the irony is, though, not consuming breakfast is just going to put you on this very slow incline for weight gain.
Oh, positively.
Just this nice, slow, gradual, slow incline with your weight.
Right.
So it defeats the whole purpose. You know what I mean? Like, there's so much science out there that talks about how breakfast is just simply the most important meal. And then there is kind of wackadoodly science that's not really science, but more just opinion based.
Of course.
Yeah, that's coming out and saying, don't have breakfast. And so people get used to not having breakfast. They listen to this, or they talk to one of us or whatever, realize, oh, I should eat breakfast. And now it's like retraining your gut flora. It's retraining your metabolism. It's retraining everything. And it's so sad, though, to see that happening to people when it truly, again, I take it back to that example you gave. Are we going to deny, a baby what they're needs are as a human being when they're hungry.
Exactly.
We're not. So we shouldn't do that as adults either. So kind of twofold within this podcast of talking about breakfast and what's appropriate and kind of the physiology behind it, but also too that weird relationship maybe some people have with breakfast.
Yeah.
Or a poor relationship, that for some reason that feeling of hunger in the morning is like, oh, let's see how long this can last.
Oh, totally. Yeah, absolutely.
And or the frustration with feeling hunger. So there's kind of different emotions tied to it as well. And I'm not a behavior specialist or therapist in any way to be able to understand that more than what we're discussing. But I do think that is something that we see quite often, in particular around breakfast. And people are more willing to eat late at night, something snacky or whatever, instead of having breakfast.
Well, because that's the excuse. So they'll be, so many people will be like, oh, well, I hardly ate anything all day. So that basically means I can pretty much do whatever I want.
Yeah, that's true. It's a reason
and that's a whole nother talk.
Yeah, it really is. Absolutely.
Definitely.
I want to make sure, at least from how I guide people, that you can visibly see carbohydrate, protein, and fat sitting down and on your plate. Yeah. These things are present, and or fruit and dairy as well.
Yep.
So that's generally the guideline that I'm working within. But again, that portion makes a big difference. I mean, I can tell you to sit down with carb, protein, and fat, and that could be egg white on, low-cal bread with fake peanut butter.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like
it's like, and that's kind of the other thing too. And I think what we need to do a pod on quality of food too. But again, disclaimer that everybody's nutrition is going to be extremely different. We're not trying to have people change their lifestyles. If they're eating dinner super, super late, that'll probably alter when they're going to have breakfast, and that's okay. And that's what we're also trying to get at too. It's really, really super individualized. The concept though is that if in our heads we think, oh, skipping breakfast is the right thing to do, we're just saying we should probably relook at that a little bit.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Cool. All right, guys.
All right. Well, that was a good one.
Until
Thanks,
next
Nicole.
time. Yeah, thank you, Annie.
Have questions you want to hear discussed on the show? Find us on Facebook or visit betweentwopastries.com and drop us a line. Want to support the show? Find us on Patreon for exclusive content. If you love the show, find us on iTunes or your favorite podcast platform. Hit the subscribe button and leave us a review.